Well, hello and welcome to another episode on the Darts Group YouTube channel with me, Tim Adams. Well, after a long break earlier on this year, you can pretty much expect darts on your box every single week at this rate. And this week is no exception with the start of the Grand Slam of darts. Can Gerwyn Price do what only Phil Taylor and Michael van Gerwen have done and make it 3 titles on the spin? Or will any of the players, apart from MVG, lift the Eric Bristow Trophy for the first time? To discuss the tournament, we've got James Lincoln, darts database guru, darts world writer, and parts owner of Raising Sand, Sam Boswell from Bet Victor, and a man who knows a thing or two about the big stage, Colin Lloyd, 2004 World Grand Prix and 2005 Match Play champ. And to finish us off later, we've got a little Q&A with Devon Peterson at the end, so stay tuned for that. Guys, welcome. What do you make of the Grand Slam of Darts tournament in November coming up?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, Tim. I've been following the Winter Series this week. Obviously, we had a great World Cup of Darts last weekend as well. So, as you say, it's coming thick and fast, entertaining every week. So, looking forward to this one too.
You played at the Grand Slam on many occasions. What do you make of this event coming up?
I said everybody looks forward to this event because not so much now, but years ago you used to get like 4, maybe 6 players from the BDO. I'm so pleased that the PDC this year have honoured that agreement where you're going to get the world champion in Wayne Warren and you're going to get the ladies world champion in Mikuru Suzuki being there. But it used to be pitted at PDC versus BDO, whereas now it's a lot different now. Obviously, there's sadly no BDO anymore. But now it's ranked. It never used to be ranked. So now there's that extra bit of oomph to it because the guys that are there and the ladies, of course, that have qualified, they've got to work that much harder because they know that it's not just a payday anymore. You have to go there and you have to play well because you know it's going on your ranking.
We're really looking forward to this one. I've got to say, obviously, we sponsored the World Cup of Darts and it was a fantastic event. We're licking our wounds a little bit, I must say. Results certainly in punters' favours. The ending up with an England v Wales final was not ideal from our perspective, but you've got to say big well done to Team Wales, who certainly impressed. And I think Gerwyn Price could make us pay once again. Looking at the tournament odds, we've got him installed 9-2, co-second favourite, with only a certain Mr. Michael van Gerwen in front of him at 7-2, which surprises me a little.
That's the thing. I think a lot of us were expecting Price to become the favourite for this tournament because the form coming in, World Grand Prix champ, back-to-back Grand Slam champ, World Cup champ, and yet MVG is still just about ahead of him with the bookies with Bet Victor.
Yep, and I can't really understand it myself. But that said, the chaps that make the darts prices are probably slightly more tuned in than me. But at the prices, I'm certainly keener to be taking that 9-2 on him than I am to be looking at 7-2 on Michael van Gerwen. I suppose from a tournament perspective, it looks, you've got to try and dig out beyond them and Peter Wright if you want to try and find somebody at a bit of a price. Got the likes of Gary in there at 14-1. Nathan Aspinall's in there at 12. I mean, it's just going to be one of those events where I think because we're back with a lot of televised darts coming thick and fast, it is the familiar household name that perhaps the more casual fan, like people like myself, are picking up on. And that's why we fear Van Gerwen, because despite his form being patchy and him not looking the same player as he once was, he has that following that just will relentlessly want to back him.
Let's talk about Michael, because it's been an interesting year. If you said to many people, many darts fans at the start of the year that he wouldn't be the Premier League champ, that he wouldn't win the World Championship, that he wouldn't win the match play, he wouldn't win the Grand Prix, many people would have said, you're having a laugh, but that's been the case. He's just come out of hospital, with that back injury. They knocked out by Germany at the World Cup. Firstly, Colin, how do you think MVG will kind of do at the Grand Slam? Because he's always been at his best at times when he wants to prove a point.
Yeah, I think today we'll learn a lot more about Michael in the Winter Series, because he's playing today. This is the only one he's playing. I think, and we'll learn a lot more. Will he compete next week? We're hoping he will. Hopefully he's back strong enough. But when you watch Michael throw, Michael really overleans. That's how his game works, and that's what's beneficial for him.
James, thoughts on MVG?
Yeah, I think Colin was talking about technical things there, but purely from a form perspective, I don't think he should be favourite for this event, and that's compounded by the fact, like you say, that he went into hospital during the World Cup last weekend. He's missed the first 3 days of the Winter Series because he's been not deemed fit enough to take part. Colin's right. I think we'll learn a bit today in terms of how he plays today. But it just seems a very troubled preparation. And I certainly wouldn't be interested in the 7-2 to be brutally honest. But you're right. You know, he's got a point to prove now, and I think motivation has been a factor in his, you know, apparent decline over the last 8-9 months. So maybe there'll be a change there. But yeah, 7-2, not for me, to be honest. And I'm surprised that Price isn't favourite.
The thing is, with MVG, do you think it's a decline which, you know, is overrated, is over talked about, or do you think it's something which could be endemic of maybe it could follow next year, that, you know, he might not ever get back to the point where he was 2 or 3 years ago?
It's a difficult one. There's an interesting article actually in Darts World. Sorry to plug Darts World, but there's an article in the next edition coming out about this apparent decline and some of the comments that have been made about it. So I think Vincent van der Voort, his good friend and in the same management stable, made a comment about, you know, he's just not as motivated as he used to be. So for me, that Colin would be able to give more insight into the technical side of things, but I certainly think that there's some kind of mental drop-off that has certainly contributed to this decline, to be honest with you. Can he get that back? Yeah, I'm sure he can get that back, but it's not very easy. If you look at the career of Phil Taylor, there are a few times where people wrote him off, and he was the king of kind of being able to go back and you know, recalculate things or make changes with his darts or make changes with his mindset and then come back and dominate again. So I guess MVG's got to prove that he can do that, because he's had a reign of uninterrupted success, really. I think he won half the majors from 2013 to 2019. So that's, you know, every other major he's winning. And now he's suddenly gone to winning none this year, apart from the UK Open, which was pre-lockdown. So he's got to prove that he can you know, go back and find whatever it was that he's lost, or whatever it is that he's lost.
That's a really interesting point, James, and I'll draw on two slightly different comparisons that went either way from other sports. It seems quite appropriate. We've got the Masters Golf being played at the moment. Tiger Woods, this was a man that was told this style of play was going to cause him issues for life. You know, he had to adapt and change his game. Not only did he do that, he overcame, obviously, issues in his personal life, but also came back to be the best at the sport. He won the Masters. He regained that crown. And, you know, he's a man that was winning everything. And I suspect motivation may have waned at some points, but he changed his style. He didn't let issues that, because of his game, he reinvented himself. Then you look at the other side of it and you have a player in tennis, for example, like Martina Hingis, who was winning everything and then couldn't reinvent her game when the women's game progressed and changed. I just wonder with Michael, is it perhaps, as much as he's been off his game a little bit, once he started to not be as dominant, the fear factor from other players went, and we've seen people step up and go, I'm not scared anymore. I'm not going to be put off. And people like Gerwyn, I think, are a fine example where he's really come out fighting and walk the walk and talk the talk. He's not afraid anymore. Do you think potentially it's more the mental side of other players as much as it's Van Gerwen's form?
I was just going to say, I think that's a contributing factor. I think he doesn't quite, you know, once you get beat a couple of times, particularly early on in tournaments, you don't quite have that fear factor that you once did. You know, I remember watching Phil Taylor back in the day, and I'm sure Colin would echo this, but players were often beat, you know, before they got on the stage, and they were scared to beat him. I think such is the standard as well today that, you know, you might get a last 32, last 16 game that'll be a genuinely tough game. And you're right, Sam, if those guys are not scared of beating Michael, then it suddenly becomes a lot tougher than it was previously.
I think also, guys, you've got to look into the fact as well that Michael's just started out with a young family. For me personally, when you're on the road a lot, you know, I never used to think about home. I was there to do a job. But Michael now, he had something else. Obviously, he had his partner, Daphne, but now he's got a young family. And I sometimes think that Michael, has he got that drive to keep going away now? Does he want to keep going away from home, or does he want to be at home a little bit there about Tiger Woods and whatever? The driving factor with darts at one time was the money side of things, because the money side of things, there wasn't massive money in darts at one time. There's massive money now. Well, like you just now said, James, Michael's won oodles of cash. He's won so much money, not only from prize money, but from sponsorship deals, exhibitions, promotions, everything. Sometimes I think some people lose that little bit of drive. I don't personally think it's a confidence thing with Michael. When you see Michael getting interviewed, he'll stand there and goes, everybody still knows who their daddy is. I'm still the best player in the world. And I don't think that's just words from Michael's mouth. I think he still totally believes that he is the best player in the world, albeit he isn't having them runs anymore. I think an interview at the World Cup of Darts, I think Michael Bridge tried to get Gerwyn Price to say, you know, you are the best player in the world at the moment, aren't you? But he wouldn't answer it. You know, and that's not a negative side of things to Gerwyn. I think deep down, Gerwyn thinks at this moment in time, he is the best player in the world. And his results certainly say that. But like you said, you can't ever write off Michael van Gerwen. I mean, he could turn up and absolutely blow this tournament apart again. But the form of the last 6 months, I don't think he's going to do that. I still think the main man is Gerwyn Price.
Is it the case then in that sense that MVG at his best is still better than every single darts player in the world, would you say? And I guess that if that's not the case in this tournament, then Price, you know, Wright, you know, the two finalists from last year become the two favourites for the tournament.
We've seen Peter Wright, we've seen Gerwyn Price really mixing it with him and holding their own with him when Michael is playing at his very best. It just so happens at this moment in time, Michael isn't at his very best. And that's not something that Gerwyn will think about. It's not something that Peter Wright will think about. Gary Anderson, all those other players that are in events where Michael is, all they're going to focus 100% on is their own game. They're not going to worry about MVG. Do I think MVG's sort of like time is up? No, I don't think so. I think he's far from up. He's just having a lax year where it's not going his own way. He's picking up some little niggles now with the back injury and whatever. And like I say, he's got a young family at home. I think he's enjoying that time of being at home. I think it's only a matter of time before that fire in his belly ignites again and we start seeing that explosive character that hits 180s for fun and 177s for fun and takes out massive shots and hits big averages.
And in terms of you know the rest, then, or kind of away from MVG now, in terms of Price and Wright and Anderson and Smith, you know, how do we think they will get on as well?
I think Gary Anderson's a difficult one because he's obviously not playing many events. He's not played on the Euro Tour at all. He's not played in this winter series. So you can't really be, I don't think he's a betting proposition because you don't really know what Gary Anderson's going to turn up. So, you know, he turned up at the match play. He got to the final by his own admission, not actually playing that well. Then he turned up at the Premier League and played really well. And then he turned up at the Grand Prix and didn't play well at all. So difficult to know what you're going to expect from him. Peter Wright obviously won the last major, European Championship, and played out of his skin to beat Gerwyn Price quite easily. I still think, I'd be interested to know what Colin thinks. I still think Wright's best game is the best game at the moment. I think Gerwyn Price is extremely difficult to beat and he's the most consistent. But I think when Wright hits his straps, as he showed at that European Championship, I think he's still got the game to beat Price when they're playing at their best. Nathan Aspinall's just gone off the boil a little bit, and so's Glen Durrant since the Premier League final. I think they've just dropped off a bit, so I personally wouldn't be interested in them at the prices they are. There's a few at bigger prices that I'd potentially be interested in, but maybe we'll leave it to Sam to take us through the market before we talk about them.
Yeah, I'll run through everybody bar sort of the big three at the front. So Gary's in there at 14s. Nathan's a 12-1 shot. Glen Durrant 14s. And then we get into sort of the 20s and bigger. Michael Smith's in there at 20-1. Rob Cross, his England teammate, 30-1. Got the likes of Dave Chisnall, 30-1. And it starts to become really big prices after that. And you can probably find bits and pieces to make cases for those players. And if you do think you've got somebody in there, I think you'll probably find a bit of value if you can find someone around those prices. I mean, I'm a big Chizzy fan from back in the day, and I'd love to see him have a good run here. I don't think I'm tempted at 30s at the moment, but he's the sort of player that on his day I think has the game in him. But you know, you've got Rob Cross sat there at the same price. I know who I'd be backing out the two at 30-1. It'd be Rob all day personally. But I'd love to get thoughts of the panel on who they think could be a bit of value at those next sort of bracket down players.
Well, Smith's a fascinating one, given he has done so well in the Winter Series recently after the World Cup final loss to Wales, and you know, 2 victories. One of them, a last start double 10 that he hit against De Souza in the final. So that clutch doubling, kind of the bit of the game where he's always been criticised over, he came on with that, and if he can replicate that onto the big stage, then who knows with Smith.
I think that's a massive price for Smith, 20-1. He's playing so well at the minute, but whatever happens, it's a floor event. You know, what's going to happen when he gets onto the TV? You know, that's where you get judged by your peers, what happens on the TV. You know, we could throw in Jose De Souza in there. He's been throwing some great stuff. Joe Cullen, Devon Peterson. They've got to prove themselves, guys, on the TV. We know they can all do it on the floor events, on the Euro Tour and on the Pro Tour events, but they've got to start producing the goods and having the great runs on the TV also.
And James, would you say Smith is potentially quite a good price as well? At those odds.
I agree with Colin. I think he's a pretty big price. He had shown glimpses recently, so I think he got to a semi-final on the Euro Tour, and then obviously I felt that he mainly carried Rob Cross last weekend. He was the dominant player in England getting to the final of the World Cup, and he's obviously come out of the blocks this week and won back-to-back Pro Tour events. His first wins actually in the PDC for over 2 years. So, and just looking at his interviews after those events, he was so relieved, and he says it's a weight off his shoulders to actually win something. So yeah, he comes into it in as good a form as he's been in for some time, and like you pointed out, the main area of his game that he struggles in is doubling, but he seems to have got tops and tens going really well this week. But a bit like Colin said, you know, we've been here before with Michael. He's got to a number of major finals. You know, he's done historically very consistently well in TV events. Actually, not so much in the Grand Slam. I don't think his record is great in this event, but it's whether he can get over the line. But 20-1, I'd certainly be tempted to have an each way play. I mean, it's worth pointing out that we're obviously doing this before the draw, which is a big factor in this event, because it's a round robin format, and there's 4 pools of players from which they're drawn from. So no doubt the market will change fairly considerably after the draw. But yeah, 20-1 today for Michael Smith is a bit overpriced in my view.
I have to say, fellas, just to throw something in the mix, I had the privilege of doing a bit of commentary for the PDC at the Ladies Tour. And obviously I don't know how Makuri's playing because of COVID going on. She hasn't been able to travel anywhere. But I have to say, can Lisa Ashton pull off a couple of shock results in the round robin? Like I said, I had the privilege of commentating on some of her games, and she played absolutely superb. And we know she's got a tour card, and she's been competing against the men and pulling off some shocks during the weekends, Michael Smith being one of them on one weekend. What sort of price would we get, Sam, on Lisa getting through the group stage? Do you know?
We'll get it priced up for you. I will leave that in the capable hands before I make a massive Rick, Colin, and you take fortunes off us. But you know, both the ladies priced up at huge odds. You know, 4-figure prices of ourselves. But I think you make a really fair point. And you know, I years ago when I was sort of cutting my teeth in this world, I did a little bit of work for BDO events and things, and it's amazing the progression that is being made now in darts. And obviously, I think Fallon took a lot of the story, and rightfully so, last year. But you know, I've caught bits of Lisa's form, and you're so spot on there that, and I think naturally, I think with the way people will bet as well, I think there's a story waiting to happen there, and you could well find that once that draw's made, she'll cause an upset or two, and naturally she'll be put in at big prices against any kind of player, and maybe that's a value angle to exploit. Definitely something to keep an eye on, I think, once the draw's out there.
Just quickly on Lisa Ashton, do you think that the fact that she has had a tour card means that she's better placed now to perform better on a big stage in the PDC?
I personally think it's massive, because she, week in, week out, I don't mean this in the way it's going to sound, but she's competing against the top players in the world in the men's side of things. And she's doing it week in, week out, which is, believe it or not, it's making her feel more at ease and more comfortable. She's not out of her comfort zone now. When she stands on that hockey, it doesn't matter who she plays. It could be Gerwyn Price, Peter Wright, you know, my MVG. It doesn't matter who she plays. She's not at a disadvantage now because she believes in her own game, and she plays against those guys week in, week out. So I think it's been great for her game.
And James, alongside Mikuri Suzuki as well, you know, the BDO Women's Champion, do you think that we will see an upset potentially in one of the round robin event group stages? Not just a victory, but potentially one of them going through to the longer knockout stages?
Possibly. I guess, like I said, it kind of depends on the draw. Certainly, if you look at the seeded players, I don't mean this respectfully to Rob Cross, but most people would probably be looking to draw him because he's struggling a bit at the moment. Not had a good time at the Winter Series. But, you know, we've seen it in the past. I remember Anastasia beat Vincent van der Voort in this event quite a long time ago now. I think it's maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And I guess it's a unique event in that you can afford to actually lose games as well. So I remember Phil Taylor got shocked by Andy Jenkins. I think it might even have been the first ever Grand Slam, and still went on to win the event. So, and I think he lost to Vincent actually straight after Vincent had lost to Anastasia. So there's bound to be a few shocks here and there. And like I say, a player losing a game in the round robin is not a complete disaster. And I think there's been cases as well, even where a player has lost two of his 3 group games and still gone through. So there's lots of different permutations and leg difference, and who knows, we might even see a 9-dart shootout as well.
Oh, they are always fun. I'm just going through Pool A then. MVG, Wright, Price, Smith, Cross, Aspinall, Wade, Anderson. Pool B's kind of fascinating because these are players that you could pretty expect to be in the top seeds. Ratajski, Durrant, Cullen, Chisnell, Clayton, Van der Bergh, White, Whitlock. Van der Bergh, obviously the match play champion, you know, who has had a bit of a renaissance being with Belgium and getting to the latter stages at the World Cup. How do we think those players in Pool B will get on, and what do we think about the odds for those then?
Yeah, I actually fancy one of my fancies at the prices is in Pool B. I'm not sure what price he is with Bet Victor. Sam, what price is Joe Cullen?
Joe Cullen's 50-1 at time of recording. This is obviously ahead of the draw.
So 50-1, I think is overpriced. I think there might be bigger out there as well. And I'm just making that judgment really based on, you know, where he is in the game. You know, he's ranked, I think he's 16 in the order of merit. He won the last Eurotour event, beating MVG comfortably in the final. He got to the quarterfinal of the Grand Prix and was 2-0 up against Chizzy and should have closed that game out, but didn't. And in the last couple of days, I think he lost to Michael Smith, averaging 108. He got to the quarterfinals of another event. So I think he comes into this event in pretty good heart, and it's actually, believe it or not, his Grand Slam debut, which says a lot about the qualifying process for this event. But he he at 50-1. When you compare him to players who I think are at a similar kind of level, you're talking about your D'Souza's. I think D'Souza's 22-1. Ratajski's around 20-1. Peterson's around 20-1. I don't really understand why Cullen is 2.5 times the price of them, to be honest. So he's my each way play at the moment. I haven't backed him yet, but he's certainly what I'm looking at from an each way perspective at the moment.
Now, James, are you the type of person that wants to take that price, or do you want to gamble and wait and see what the draw does?
I think I'm tempted to take the price, to be honest, and then hope he gets a good draw.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think it's something that perhaps when you're looking pre-tournament that isn't factored in enough. The fact that we all know things will change, but some people will wait. And if he gets a softer draw, and if someone's backed him anti-post anyway, you're going to not get your big price. So I think fortune sometimes favours the brave. So best of luck to you. 50-1 looks a fair price, and hopefully can get through.
And Colin, out of those guys, Dave Chisnall, Grand Slam runner-up in 2014 as well, alongside Jonny Clayton, who's just recently won the World Cup. So you've got players who have been there and done it before in this tournament, and they've got that experience against players who have just had recent success. How do they compare for you?
Well, it'd be interesting to see how Jonny pushes on. He's always been a good, solid player, but now he's won a major TV event in the pairs at the World Cup. Although he was there with Gerwyn Price, but Chizzy's the Jimmy White of darts, isn't he? He's the nearly man. Although Jimmy won a couple of major events, unfortunately Dave hasn't managed to cross over the line. Still a dangerous player though, And the one for me, I chat with him quite a bit and I do a little bit with him, and it was interesting that James was saying about Joe Cullen. Joe Cullen and Devon Peterson are very, very good close friends, and I think they practice a lot together. And it's interesting to see that they're both now, that Joe's pushing on and he's just changed dart manufacturer. Devon Peterson has massively pushed on as well, and he's changed dart manufacturers. It's as if they've reinvented their game. And they've always taken it seriously, but they're just pushing on that little bit more now. So it'll be interesting to see how Devon goes on. I'd like to see how Devon goes on because he's been throwing some really good stuff of late. Let's not forget he won a Euro Tour event, and that was his first ever ranked event win. And he's thrown some good stuff on the TV also. So if he can get that scoring going, like we know he can, the main thing that sort of like worries me sometimes about Devon is his finishing. He sometimes sort of like overthinks his finishing. But if it's all there, if it all comes together, I think Devon Peterson could be very, very dangerous.
And Devon Peterson in Pool C, and I'll just go through that. Watamina, Evans, Peterson, D'Souza, Clemens, Humphries, Joyce, and Ryan Sell. With Devon, and we've got an interview, cute little Q&A with Devon at the end of this as well, alongside kind of D'Souza, kind of two, up and coming players in terms of kind of their form. How do we think D'Souza kind of gets on as well in this tournament?
Me and Colin were actually discussing this before we came on, but there's, like you say, Tim, there's a certain group of players at the moment who haven't quite made an impact in majors yet. So I'm talking about the likes of D'Souza, Gabriel Clemens, Peterson, even though Peterson reached the last major semi at the European Championships, Joe Cullen, etc. And I briefly asked Colin before we came on, and I'll let Colin answer this now, but what is it that those guys need to do to take their floor game to start making an impact in major events on TV?
Like you said, James, we chatted beforehand. For me personally, I just think these guys don't need to overthink it. I think they try that much harder because it is not only a major, it's a TV event. Everybody can see you. Everybody's watching. You've got a massive crowd. Unfortunately, we can't have the crowds this year, obviously, but you usually got big crowds. And you've got the TV audience. And sometimes that frightens players. They can be great floor players, but they don't ever seem to get over the line on the TV. It's now about that final push. They've got to believe their hype. They are good players. They beat the players that are just that much above them, all because they're major champions and they're doing things on TV. but they beat them on the floor. It's no different. You just go up 3 or 4 steps. The board's still 7'9¼ away. You've just got to let your own game go. Just let it flow. Don't overthink it. And I think that's what happens with a few of them. They overthink it and they come off and they think, well, I should have won that. I should have won that. You can't keep saying that for the rest of your career. I should have. I should have. I should have. Do it. You know, but don't overthink yourself when doing it. Let it happen. Keep it all nice and free. Let it happen.
Colin, something I just want to throw your way as well. It's quite interesting the way you talk about that and the whole trying to take that step from being good to great, I guess. Do you think social media these days must be so hard, so much harder for players? You can't walk off stage and the boos turn off because you pick up your phone and there's a million people critiquing you on your game 24/7 until that next event. Do you think the players these days just have to be so much more mentally tougher?
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I mean, there would be quite a few ways I'd reply to that as being an Essex boy and whatever. But my reply always used to be, I'm up here doing it. Where are you? You're sitting behind a computer and a keyboard. You're berating me for trying to do my job. I'm here. You pick a set of darts up and you come up and try and do it. At least I'm having a go. You know, I know exactly what you're saying. And there are some people that they get unjustified critics of their game. Don't read into it too. It's easy for me to say, don't. I used to get a lot of stick on Twitter and I used to respond to a little bit of it very naughtily. But then I got scolded by my partner and she turned around and said, don't read it. Don't look at it. You know, and in the end, I just started scrolling past it. I thought to myself, I'm not going to have fans everywhere. No. There's going to be someone that doesn't like me. There's going to be people out there that don't like MVG, don't like Price winning. Whatever people say, I'm going to use Gerwyn Price as a instant. He's someone that when he's got something to say, he says it. All Gerwyn Price worries about is winning darts to earn money, to look after his family. I don't see anything wrong with that. When you start getting a little bit voicey about other people, then you're going down a slippery slope because they can just say his Twitter, for instance, they can retweet it, and then that player's fans will just go whoomp, and they'll just attack that player who said it. It's a lot to deal with, Sam. I totally agree with you. I'm just glad I don't have to do it anymore.
Well, one player who's kind of been the centre of attention recently is Dirk van Duijvenbode. And, you know, with the aubergine farm and everything around that, when you listen to the interviews with him, it's almost as if he kind of acknowledges that people are kind of talking to him in the interviews, but then he's in his own little world and he doesn't really care what they say. And, you know, he's still going to go back to the aubergine farm if darts doesn't go well, and he's got that. And do you think that, you know, that attitude has helped him recently? Because I remember when, you know, I was watching in early videos of him, there was a YouTube video where he bust a 180 against, I think it might have been Barney at the World Championship, possibly. And that was the only video which went viral of him. And now he's the World Grand Prix runner-up. And, you know, he could be a dangerous player in this competition.
Yeah, well, he got to the final of the Grand Prix, didn't he? So he's clearly not afraid of the big stage and the TV. And, you know, he's quite expressive the way he walks up there, and he's got his techno blasting out on the way to the stage. So he seems like a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. He's playing some good darts. I think he's in the 4th pool. Tim, is that right?
I think so, yeah, which is a bit like the Champions League in football. You always look at those teams in pot 4 like Marseille recently in the Champions League and you think, oh, they're going to be tough. I think Dirk could be one of those players as well.
Yeah, so he's a player that's probably going to have a tough draw, but at the same time, people in the higher pools are going to think, I don't fancy drawing him from Pool D.
I think with Dirk, you know, why should he? He says that he's not going to be phased or put out about people mocking him about being an aubergine farmer and all that sort of thing. Why should they? He's just earning a living. He's got a full-time job that pays him his wages, and you know, darts at this moment in time is giving him a nice few quid, but he doesn't feel as though he can give up his full-time job yet to go as a full-time professional player. Jonny Clayton's exactly the same. Are people going to knock Jonny Clayton for getting up and going plastering week in, week out? No. Sometimes I just think people, they can be too critical about players. And at the end of the day, we're just everyday Joes that go about our business. If I was still had a job and then I went to tournaments or whatever, I don't see why people should get a little bit snidey and a little bit grumpy about that and send narky little messages, go back to doing what you do best, which is being a farmer or being a builder or doing whatever. I've never been one for being critical about people like that. At the end of the day, if they've got a job and they want to carry on working while throwing some darts in between, the very best of luck to them. And hopefully one day they feel that they can make that leap and make that jump to say, right, I'm now going to go a full-time dart player.
But Colin, do you think that in a way would depending on how your outlook is on life, is a benefit to a player who they've got that safety net of the day job, so the darts remains fun and doesn't put, the day that they cross that line and go, right, I'm all in on darts, it must put a lot more pressure on a player, and it makes it a more sink or swim moment for them for those 6 months that they decide, I'm going pro, that's it, no other income.
Mate, it is massive. I can only speak on behalf of myself. I won the World Grand Prix in 2004. I won it on the Sunday evening. I travelled home on the Monday. Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock, I was on a dirty, muddy, grotty building site in Essex, back on ground working. The prize money wasn't there in my day. Good prize money, don't get me wrong, but the potential earnings of a top dart player today far outweighed what I'd done. And I never went full-time pro. I actually went full-time pro that Christmas at the World Championships. I lost second round. Can you imagine that? I'm the World Grand Prix champion. I've lost second round of the World Championships. I was on thinking to myself, hopefully I think it was about, 100 grand to the winner that year or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, I'd like to have a little piece of that. And I've won something like 2 grand. And I thought to myself, do I go back to the building site? Do I? But I'd made that leap and I stuck by it. And thankfully enough, I'd done all right out of it. But I know and totally understand what you're saying, Sam. It is something that you really have to sit down and think about, because it is a big leap, like you say. That constant income all of a sudden goes, and then it feels like you've got the weight of your own car on your shoulders every time you go out and throw a dart, because you think to yourself, I've got to earn some money this week because I haven't earned any money the last 3 weeks and I've got bills to pay. So I totally understand and know what you're saying. But Dennis Ovens, that's one name I'll throw into you guys. Dennis Ovens was a top-class player. All right, Dennis never won a major. Dennis never, ever gave up his job. He just used to take time off of work and used to come and play darts, cause some upsets, but never gave up his day job. He said, I can't afford to give up my day job, and nor do I want to give up my day job. I enjoy it too much. So if guys want to work as well as play darts, I'd say you do what you feel is beneficial for you.
Well, talking of prize money, if there is a 9-darter at this tournament as well, we could see some extra cash spilled out there. Is that the case again? And what are the odds for a 9-darter? Have we got those odds, Sam?
Not priced yet. I will put in the request. Apologies for that. But listen, we always love a bet on the 9-darter. I know it's my one guilty pleasure for the Worlds. Every year without fail, I'll be backing 1 and 2. So be interested to see. Obviously, I'm sure we've probably discussed it previously with the fact there's no fans there, whether that makes it easier or harder. I'll let someone like Colin tell me whether that makes it easier or harder. You see him hitting floor events probably more often statistically, but I still think sometimes you need that added push, but we'll see. Colin, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm going to stick my neck out, Sam, and I'm going to say there's going to be a 9-darter in this Grand Slam. We've seen 3 already this week in the Winter Series, and I just think the guys are playing so well at the moment. I just can't see there not being a 9-darter. We've seen some near misses, but yep, I'm going to stick my neck out, and I believe, Sam, you're going to give me, 25 to 1?
Absolutely.
This week?
if I had to take
I think the guys are playing so well. at the moment. I just can't see there not being a 9-darter in this event. I think everybody's going to push everyone so hard. Like you say, Sam, it will be a little bit funny with no crowd. I think the guys have got used to it now. They've got used to it. It was strange to start off with without the crowd, but I think they've got used to it now. And I think they'll just be throwing exactly the same, but they'll be a little bit more relaxed if they've got that dart in their hand for the double 18 or the double 12.
No, I think if I had to gun to my head, I think it'd be a shades of odds on. But I'll let the experts do that.
And just before finishing off, James, I want to go to you. We always talk about these kind of formats as, you know, they are similar to like Champions League, Europa League kind of draws in football. You know, you always predict the groups of death, the best groups to get. What, for you, what would be the group of death that you could pick, like the 4 toughest opponents from each pool, would you say? Put you on the spot here.
Good question. I think if I just ignore your question very briefly, I think if you look at the winners of this event, it's actually been a very predictable event. So I think Phil Taylor won 6 of the first 8. MVG won 3 on the trot. The only kind of shock has been Scott Waite's winning in 2010 as a BDO player, although he'd got to the final the year before, so maybe it wasn't so much of a shock. And Gerwyn Price, I think, was the lowest ranked player to win it, and he was 12 in the order of merit coming into it 2 years ago. So I think from an outright market perspective, it's actually been quite a predictable event. And the 9-2 on Price would be the price I'd be looking to take now. In terms of the groups, the group of death. So I'm just getting the groups up here. So I guess in pool 1, you wouldn't want Wright or Price, so that they'd be the 2 hot players in pool 1. In pool 2, I would say probably Joe Cullen and Ratajski, probably the 2 hottest players. Clayton's playing quite well, obviously coming off the World Cup win. In the third pool, I'd be looking to definitely avoid the Sousa, Peterson, and Gabriel Clemens has played some awesome stuff this week in the Winter Series. I think it was on Wednesday. He had 212 averages, 110 and 105 in 4 consecutive matches. So he's playing out of his skin. And then in the final pool, probably Van Duijvenbode and Damon Heta. Damon Heta's playing really well. Rich
Darts Masters champion, of course.
Yeah. So some combination of those 8 or 9 players, I think, would be, a really tough group to get.
Any final thoughts on the Grand Slam from any of you guys before we finish?
I think I'm just going to really put my neck out on the line here and back Gerwyn Price at 9-2, but I do think we've perhaps made an interesting choice in putting Van Gerwen in at 7-2. But for me, I think Gerwyn Price pre-draw, we're talking 9-2. That'll do for me.
And James and Colin?
Yeah, I think from an outright perspective, this tournament, like I say, has proved fairly predictable. I think that might possibly be because players, the top-rated players, can have hiccups or lose matches in the group stage, and it doesn't affect their potential path to winning it. So, Gerwyn Price for me should be favourite. So 9-2 would certainly be a bet for me. From an each-way perspective, I like Joe Cullen at the odds. I think 50s is pretty big and pretty generous of Bet Victor. So, he'd be one for me each way. So Gerwyn Price and Joe Cullen for me.
Well, I think that makes all 4 of us for Gerwyn Price in that sense then. Well, thank you guys for that. And hopefully it'll be an amazing Grand Slam of Darts, an interesting Grand Slam of Darts, given there's no crowd there. But sure, it'll be fascinating nonetheless. Thank you for joining us. We've got a quick Q&A with Devon Peterson coming up, but that's it for the Grand Slam of Darts preview on this show. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Darts World. I'm joined by the one and only Devon Peterson, and we're going to be going through a quickfire Q&A. So to kick us off, what's your first memory of playing darts, Devon?
Probably at my uncle's house in a garage, and just kind of throwing it around, standing closer to the board, and also my father screaming at me saying, "Don't stand too close."
What would you say is your first memory of watching darts?
VHS cassette. Andy Fordham played who was it? I could have been Chris Mason in one of the finals, not finals, quarterfinals, and then there was another one with Kevin Paint on it as well. It's an old school, like I was in school, I remember, and I used to watch it every single day, and every day I'd watch the same game, and I'd hope for a different result for Andy Fordham, but I think he lost that match.
Who would you have as your darts GOAT, the greatest of all time?
It's got to be Phil Taylor. I mean, there's nobody quite like him at this point in time from a darting perspective. I mean, he just dominated even as the years went on. I mean, he just got better and better, and the field got better, but he just continued to kind of dominate. And yeah, the last years, I mean, he still showed us in his last year that he could be good to the world final, and yeah, won a match play as well. So he's definitely the darts GOAT.
If you play at all, what's your highest break at snooker?
I always used to joke with Joseph, Joe Cullen. He always plays the game, and I'm like, it's like playing pool on a football pitch. So I can't say. I probably, it's not even anything to record. So I'd not. I'd rather not say.
Fair enough. Who would you say, darts or otherwise, is your sporting hero?
I've got a few though. Like there's different sports that I watch. LeBron James, seen him win with the Lakers and 3 other teams as well, just shortly a few days ago. Tiger Woods, you got the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, just a lot of the players that are in the kind of elite areas of the game at this point in time, and kind of just seeing the composure. And I learn a lot from the different sports as well. So yeah, I've got a few, but it's definitely LeBron James and the likes of players that's in that kind of category.
So you're in Bradford at the minute, but what is your favourite holiday destination?
Favorite now Cape Town is a holiday, and when we go to Cape Town, we treat it as a holiday. So Cape Town definitely for me. I mean, it's probably, a lot of people go to different places, like they go to Spain and all of that, but we've got a piece of Spain, a piece of Italy, a piece of France in South Africa, in Cape Town as well. So yeah, and then we got the ocean, like Greek ocean and all of that. So we've got a little bit of all the different places in the world in Cape Town. So yeah, I've got to say Cape Town is probably my best holiday destination.
That's brilliant. Now back to darts. And what's your proudest moment in your darting career?
Probably achieving my tour card the second time. The first time was great, came over, made some history, injured my wrist, and I thought I wasn't going to play the sport again. Worked hard, came back, and then qualifying, getting it the second time in a field of about, it could have been 400 and something. 400 and something at the Q school, which was a massive feat for me because I didn't think that I could. And it's the year that I never qualified for the Worlds as well. So yeah, it was like a double trauma kind of thing for me. And then yeah, when I won the tour card, I still have it today, so I'm over the moon about that.
That's brilliant. Back away from darts now. What's the best TV program you've ever watched in your opinion?
I do enjoy series, and I do enjoy like it's probably gonna be Power. That's currently on I think it's Stars. Yeah, I like Power. I think it's just the difference in dynamic and yeah, and thinking outside the box.
What's now the best film you've ever watched?
Oh, there's a few though. Best though, it's got to be Inception. Yeah, Inception is definitely thought provoking, and it's the kind of films I like to see.
Yeah, that one messes up my head massively. Now, lastly, what was your first ever job?
First ever was, my dad has his own business, so he's an upholsterer, so he does like work for many other he has contracts. So yeah, that was my first kind of job where I used to strip couches and chairs and stuff like that for but holiday money, and that was my first job.